What's up? It's Josh Levine from Zero to Piano. In this video, I'm going to define some basic rhythm terminology and demonstrate some basic rhythm counting concepts so that we can be on the same page when we start talking about groove. If you've ever watched a band and wondered how musicians can play a piece together without getting lost in questions like, when do I come in? Or when do we break? It's because they're all feeling a steady underlying pulse that acts like a time anchor. Rhythm is the word we use to describe everything to do with that pulse and our relationship to it. Rhythm is counted. If you've ever heard a musician call out 1, 2, 3, 4 before the band starts playing, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When a musician does that, when he counts 1, 2, 3, 4, something very magical happens. He communicates to everyone exactly how fast the song is going to be. For example, there's a big difference between 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a whole range of speeds that it could be. The word we use for the speed of a song is tempo, and we measure it in beats per minute, or BPM. A beat is the space between each number. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is 4 beats. Beat, 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 beat. If you count up how many beats go by in a minute, you'll get a number like 60 beats per minute, or 60 BPM. The higher the number, the more beats you crammed into the minute, and the faster they have to go by. So, let's say I told you that we're going to play a song at 95 beats per minute. How would you know exactly how fast that is? Well, you could do some math and figure out exactly how many fractions of a second each beat is. Or you could do what musicians have been doing for hundreds of years and use a metronome. A metronome is like a beat calculator. Instead of doing the mental math, you just punch in the BPM you want and it generates a little click at exactly that tempo. Metronomes are absolutely essential practice tools for musicians. If you don't have one, I definitely recommend that you go get one or download one on your phone. This is the metronome that I use, just a simple digital one that I got at, I think, Guitar Center. Let's set the tempo at 95 beats per minute. Hear that? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's nice. Perfect, steady click at 95 beats per minute. Why is this tool so powerful? The steady click of the metronome does two things. It keeps us honest about our perception of time, and it helps us feel rhythmic subdivisions more accurately. What's a rhythmic subdivision? Well, it's about dividing the space between each beat into smaller rhythmic units. I'm going to represent that visually with a timeline. The most basic unit of rhythm is the quarter note. A quarter note is usually what we think of as a single beat. When we count 1, 2, 3, 4, we just counted 4 quarter notes. A quarter note lasts from the moment you say the number until the beginning of the next. So from the beginning of 1 all the way until the beginning of 2, not shorter and not longer. If you put 2 quarter notes together, you get a half note from the beginning of 1 all the way to the beginning of 3, the length of 2 beats. If you put 4 quarter notes together, you get a whole note. So from the beginning of 1 all the way to the beginning of the next one. Like the name suggests, a whole note is the length of 4 quarter notes or 2 half notes. What if you go the other way? You could divide a quarter note in half and get an 1/8 note, or divide an 1/8 note in half and get a 16th note. Mathematically, this all makes sense. The largest rhythmic unit is a whole note, and if you divide by 2, you get all of the other basic rhythmic subdivisions. You might ask, are there subdivisions smaller than 16th notes? And technically, the answer is yes, because really you can subdivide a beat infinitely, theoretically, and 32nd notes and 64th notes actually do come up sometimes, but unless you're a drummer, they're very, very rare. So since this is an introductory video, we're going to skip them for now. Let's get a sense of what each of these subdivisions sound like. I'm going to grab my handy bass here. Okay, whole notes. Here we go. That's what it sounds like. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice that the whole note doesn't end at the beginning of 4, it ends at the end of 4 or the beginning of 1. Since I started at the beginning of 1, it has to go the length of 4 full quarter notes. If I stopped at 4, then it would only be the duration of 3 quarter notes, which is not long enough to be a whole note. Okay, so a half note, same kind of deal. It's got to be the length of 2 quarter notes, so I've got to start at 1 and end at the beginning of 3. Then if I'm starting on 3, I've got to end at the beginning of the next one. Kind of sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So one half note would sound like this. 1, 2, off. 1, 2, off. Okay, now quarter notes. Quarter notes are easy. Here we go. One quarter note sounds like this. 1. Put them together. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, eighth notes. Since eighth notes are the first subdivision that we count between the beat, we have to use some different syllables to describe them. We're going to invent the word and we're going to place it in between each of the numbers. So it's going to sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Something else about eighth notes. When we introduce subdivisions between the beats, we get a couple of different terminologies. We call the numbers the downbeats, and we call the ands the upbeats. And you can actually kind of feel this in your body if you really try. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and down, up, down, up, down, up. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. 5. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and etc. Okay, last one, 16th notes. Since we're dealing with subdivisions smaller than eighth notes, we're going to have to invent some new syllables again. We're going to invent the syllables e and to describe the subdivisions that we haven't yet described. Okay, if I count it right, it sounds like this. 1 e and a, 2 e and a, 3 e and a, 4 e and a. Let's play it a little bit more slowly. 1 e and a, 2 e and a, 3 e and a, 4 e and a, 1 e and a, 2 e and a, 3 e and a, 4 e and a, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. With 16th notes, there's not really a special word that refers to the e's and the uhs, but we do still refer to the numbers as downbeats and to the ands as upbeats. It's just useful terminology to have around. Okay, last concept. We're going to talk about the concept of a measure. You might have noticed that I try not to count further than the number 4. Once I get to the number 4, I stop climbing up and I'll reset back to 1. It's convenient to count like this because otherwise we'd have to count all the way up without stopping, which would get very cumbersome after a while. Not only would it be hard to keep track of where you were, but the numbers kind of get to be a little bit of a mouthful as you go higher. Like imagine trying to keep the beat when you're counting 113, 114, 115, so on. It's just easier to repeat 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So, musicians invented a convenient way to keep track of all the beats by grouping them into little sections that we call measures. A measure is just a bite-sized group of beats that we can count easily. Most common kind of measure has 4 beats in it, like we've been talking about. 1, 2, 3, 4, just like it's on the board right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, reset. 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, there are a million other ways to group beats into measures. You could have 2 beats per measure. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. You could have 3 beats per measure. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Or any other number, like, okay, let's try 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You can kind of start to hear with me just counting that changing the number of beats in a measure has a huge impact on how a song would feel. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 just feels very different from 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. The most common grouping is 4 quarter notes per measure. It's also the most convenient one because if a measure is the length of 4 quarter notes, then it is also the length of 1 whole note, 2 half notes, 8 eighth notes, and 16 16th notes, just like we have here on the board. Most popular songs that you listen to are structured like this, with 4 beats per measure. And in my piano program, we're going to focus mostly on this grouping. This is great news for you because this grouping tends to be the most natural and intuitive, which is probably why it's the most common. Okay, so I hope to have provided you with a brief survey of some basic rhythm terminology. If any of these concepts aren't quite sinking in yet, that's totally okay. Just remember, all of it will make more sense when you start using it in the context of playing. So keep playing, and feel free to revisit this video later on if you feel like you could use a quick refresher.